Hi everybody, it's Az here from HeelvsBabyface on the live servers for Final Fantasy XIV Heavensward with the second of the two top tier dungeons which are available at the moment. And this one is called the FRACTAL CONTINUUM. Ooh, that's a bit of a mouthful. I would have liked to call it the big shiny place with lots of rubble. But this place, I mean, it looks absolutely gorgeous. I really like the aesthetic of this dungeon inside. Before I go into any like trash and mods and blah blah blah, I just think it has a very cool sort of, well, I'm not sure if it's like some sort of research center or some sort of museum. It looks as if it's some sort of museum or some sort of experimental research area. It's really kind of eerie, bit cool. Again, I'm sure I've mentioned this in a previous video, but kind of reminds me a little bit of Phantasy Star Online in certain areas. The kind of neon that goes along the floor, the sides, the walls, all that kind of aspect. Maybe it's just an Eastern thing, a Japanese thing that they kind of put on their architectures in these type of games. But the aesthetic is something completely different because this is in the final zone that you would go to start leveling up. And that's like some massive spaceship in the sky, and it's all very kind of Star Trek-y and nebulae and all this kind of weird stuff. Whereas before, we've been grounded down below with some, just regular kind of what you class as fantasy stuff. So, bash through the trash, and we get on to our first boss, the Phantom Ray. Nothing to do with Metal Gear Solid, by the way. When I saw this boss, first thing I thought was, well, first couple of things I thought. General Grievous from Star Wars Episode 3. Not sure if that's a good idea, a good thing, bad thing. And I also thought Gilgamesh as well, who I believe is actually going to be in the game. So I thought, is this kind of like their version of Gilgamesh? Anyway, let's go on to some tactics, shall we? Now, this fight is very much an awareness fight. I mean, literally from start to finish, every single solitary person has to be aware. Starts off nice and touchy-feely. There's a couple of big AoEs to avoid here, and they come in the shape of two massive triangles which are adjacent to each other that appear randomly around the room. We just saw it at the beginning of the fight, and it's going to come in again right now. So there's the first one avoided, move into a safe area, second one avoided. So it's provided two of these thus far, and everything seems to be hunky-dory. Then they shape it up a little bit. So you get the triangles adjacent to each other, again in random spots around the battlefield. And then you get all the circles coming in as well. And it's not just one or two, it's a wad of them. They overlap, they go all over each other. And you really have to be aware of where was the safe spot. Because not only are you looking to avoid the first triangle, you're looking to avoid the circles, and then realizing where you can maneuver so you don't get hit by the wave. And if you do get hit by the wave, the very final one, the one is just a raid-wide AoE that he'll deal, not massive damage. But if you do get hit by it, it's going to hurt quite a lot. I think I have been hit by it in the a previous fight, and it dealt around 3,800 odd damage to me. It was a decent hit. It probably took about 40 odd % of my health off at that time. So that healers have got to be on the lookout to make sure that none of the derps and themselves, of course, are moving properly and trying to mitigate as much damage as they possibly can. Just make sure that damage doesn't come in, and then just heal up this very low AoE pulse that he does at the end of this whole maneuver. But as you can see as well, he'll do one with the circles. After he's done the two at the beginning of the triangles without circles, he'll then do circles, non-circles, circles, non-circles. So at least you should be aware of when they're coming in. There you go. He did a non-circle before, now comes a circle, and again, you just have to be absolutely spot on about your movement here. Where you can go, where's going to be safe. Can I time it that if I do go into an area where the circle's been, the ability has already theoretically gone off. Therefore, I'm not going to get any additional damage dealt if I move back in. Move too quickly, of course, and which I have done again, because I've done this dungeon a few times now, and it'll go smackaroonie. They go 2,700 I took from that, so I must have just got clipped by the blast wave. So again, 2,700. I'm operating off a health pool here of around about 9,000 and something. So 2,700, that's a rough approximation, 30-odd% of my health. That is rather a lot. And again here, stuck in it all, move, 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 move. So it's a great awareness fight. I really enjoyed this. The mechanics aren't massive, but it's a great little feeler into this fight, because the final boss... the final boss here, I love, but I'm gonna go into it right now. So it's just a matter of everybody being aware, and it's one thing that I really like about Final Fantasy Dungeons as we knock down the boss. See you later, Ray. See, that's got a proper name, Ray. None of this like you know, just like Ray or Bob or Sue. I'd like to see a boss called Sue. But yeah, as I was saying, this is one thing that I really like about Final Fantasy Dungeons. I really like the fact that it gets every single solitary person involved. I have noticed, and I'm not pointing any specific MMOs out here, because there are a few which are guilty of it. When an MMORPG group normally has DPS, the DPS tend to not do a lot apart from stand there and tunnel vision. It's normally the tank that has to actually deal with the mechanics. Sometimes, of course, the healer has to be aware of spiky damage coming in. The healer's also got to be aware of if anyone makes a faux pas, and of course they have the tank as well. So the healers are always on the ball as well, but DPS often get forgotten about. It's kind of like, well, your job's just to kill, just to knock stuff down. But here, in virtually every fight, there is a lot, you know, there is something for the DPS to do. There's something for them to be aware of. There's something for them to interact with, which we'll get to on the next boss as well, which kind of brings them and makes them far more involved in the process. And that's a very, to me, a very clever thing, a very simple thing, and yet at the same time, a very important thing. Because I feel as if a job as a DPS, my job as a DPS, because that's what I'm doing, I normally, by the way, heal in Final Fantasy XIV, or just Final Fantasy games. I did it in Final Fantasy XI as well, so this is a new thing for me. But I feel as if a DPS class is as worthy as a healer or a tank. Maybe that's vanity, je ne sais pas. But yes, let's move on now to the next boss, and this one is a really cool looking Minotaur, and he looks absolutely freaking amazing, I've got to say that, with its really big axe. Overcompensating. Now, this has got a very interesting mechanic attached to it. Again, simple fight, but this one has a kill mechanic, whereas the other boss didn't have an outright kill mechanic. This does. So the boss itself will have three major abilities. Obviously, tank, normal kind of routine applies. Turn the boss away from the raid. In this case, you can position him nearer the edge. It doesn't have to be in the middle, etc. You can do what you want with it, really. And the three main abilities that it does is, number one, it will telegraph them. He'll charge up, and if he doesn't have his axe in the air, he'll charge up. He's going to do a big AoE. So everybody who's in the melee range should be fine anyway, move away. This is just a random charge. Nothing you can do to stop it, just deal with it. And then that. Don't get hit by that. When he starts waving his axe in the air, he's going to do a frontal cone attack, which has substantial distance on it. I got caught in it. I got hit by it. Purely, of course, to show it off in the video. I would never make a mistake like that normally. And it dealt around 3,700 damage. This is the kill mechanic. After he's done those two abilities, he will eventually make his way to the center of the room. That's why it's quite good to bring him away to the side, so you can see exactly when he starts to make his move. And you'll see that the floor gets covered completely by a little purple mist. Kind of like the purple mist which is blocking off the exit there to leave the battlefield. That if he completes this cast, will wipe the raid. So what you have to do here is, surrounding the battlefield, we have 4 tubes that have mobs inside of it. When he starts to cast it, have one of the ranged, it looks like the healer's doing it for this fight. I think this is the very first time I was in this dungeon, hence why I'm a little bit scatty. But when he does start to cast that ability in the middle, you right click onto one of these incubator tubes and you get the ad out. When the ad comes out, it stops the boss's cast, and therefore it stops the kill mechanic that would wipe the group. I thought that's pretty cool. But as soon as, there you go, you can see the purple all on the floor now. Don't worry, the healer's onto it. I'm just trying to make myself feel important. So when it is out, because I've taken on the role of this, every time I go into this dungeon now, I take on this role. I try and make myself feel better. But when it comes out, kill the ad immediately. It will link up to the boss. You need to kill the ad ASAP and then get back to it. There you go. It's waving its axe up in the air. So it's going to do its frontal cone. So other than that, it becomes a rinse and repeat area. But you'll notice that because there is only 4 incubators around the battlefield, you're only going to be able to block the insta-kill mechanic 4 times. Otherwise, if your DPS is really low, and I've been in a couple of groups because I'm new to Machinist, it's a new class to the game, I didn't do the beta, so I'm kind of learning things as time goes on with this class. So apparently I've been told that Machinist damage isn't great at the moment, and they'll likely get some sort of boost probably as time goes on. But I have been in a group where we went through all 4 of the tubes. I've also been in a group where we didn't even get to the 3rd. So you can kind of see how damage can fluctuate in groups depending on who you've been teamed up with, and obviously the skill level of that player, the gear of that player, and all that kind of jazz. So had we not been able to kill the boss in that 4th, after that 4th tube had opened, and he went back to the middle to do the kill mechanic again, that would have been a wipe. That would have been a complete wipe. There would be nothing that we could have done about it. So there is a slight, not huge, but there is a slight timed function to this fight as well. If your DPS isn't up to muster, likelihood is you could get yourself in a wee bit of trouble. And in actual fact, again, this is the first time I've been in this dungeon, I believe we're going to go to all 4 of the incubators on this. But I was in with a Dragoon, and yeah, like I said, we kind of like smashed through it. Absolutely smashed this boss to pieces. And also, I'm not sure if the healer is helping out with the DPS. One thing that I have been told about healers in Final Fantasy is literally when they are not healing, they should be damaging. It's as simple as that. It's not one of these ones they just kind of like sit back and don't deal with a lot. If they are not, if they're not healing, then they should be helping out, should be doing some DPS, blah, blah, blah. So there we go. That's the 4th one, but you see the boss is just about dead anyway. He's going to drop before we even kill the ad. Plonk. Down you go. You grab some loot. Move forward to the final boss. So you notice, though, on the right-hand side, there is lots of checkpoints to go through, but the checkpoints are really trash areas. There's only 3 bosses in this actual dungeon itself. When you get to the first ream of ads, grab them all. Literally grab every single solitary pack, AoE, 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 AoE. Just hit every single solitary bit of AoE that you get. They have low health pools. They don't hit massively hard. Your healer, regardless of skill, shouldn't have too many problems. Click the various wards after you've defeated the ads, and then you can bounce over to another platform and again engage all the ads that are there. There's also a couple of treasure chests here on either side, and it doesn't matter which one of the platforms you shoot yourself off from, whether it's the left or the right, it doesn't matter at all. It's just whichever one you choose. We've gone to the right a few times, we've gone to the left a few times. But you'll also notice at certain times there's lots of little damage coming in through ads which are spawning. So when the smaller robots get spawned into the fight here, they literally have next to no health. Blow them up quickly, because as you can see, there was lots of Ghostbuster cross beams going on there, and that was causing, you know, that could cause some unnecessary damage that the healer doesn't really want to deal with. So there you see, that's how it spawns in. It kind of puts a yellow circle on the ground, which you're meant to move out of anyway, and then blow up the ad. And then, of course, this little claw, the little predator claw, whatever it wants to call it, that does a similar thing. A frontal attack in a line. And, yeah, get it done, get it down. Treasure chests are behind. Loot them. Because I'm excited to get on to the final boss, which is here. Now this one, boy, oh boy. There is a lot going on in this fight, and it's really, really cool. I thoroughly enjoyed this. Plenty to talk about with what's going on. This is mechanic heavy. And I don't think there's a kill mechanic. I don't think there's an insta-kill mechanic, as there has been. But there are going to be plenty of things for both the tank, healer, and all the DPS as well. Don't forget those, boys and girls, to deal with too. Now, first things first, engage, and one thing, tank, that you're going to have to do is keep the boss on the move. I mean, I'm not just saying pull it and then just drag it around willy-nilly. You can plonk it in one spot, but you're going to have to move the boss a lot throughout the course of this fight. Every so often, ads will spawn in, as has happened here. DPS need to switch immediately to these ads. Why? Well, notice when the ads start to move, they light up a panel blue. Do not step on the lit blue panel. Also, it means that that blue panel is always going to explode when a certain mechanic comes into play, which we'll see shortly. Alright? Secondly, there'll be random bombs placed on party members. Now, these bombs will make you have an effect. You'll start to kind of glow a little bit reddy blacky. Healers, you need to, I believe you can do this, dispel those bombs immediately. This is the explosion mechanic. The first of the explosion mechanics. It will light up a segment of area with the blue shining squares. It will always incorporate the squares which have been walked on by the ads and come into effect, and then after a certain amount of time, explode. So obviously the longer the ads are alive and the more squares they manage to cover of the battlefield, they are always going to explode when that mechanic comes in. So if you let the ads move forward and they take 3, 4, 5, 6 of the squares up when they're moving forward, you see that blue one there is absolutely going to happen. One to the right hand side, that's absolutely going to explode. It means there's less areas for you to move safely to, and it could cause big bang boomy. You don't want to get stuck on that. You'll also notice, not only do you get bombs on yourself, you also get bombs on platforms too. So these red circles that are on these squares that are pulsating red, do not go near them. They're kind of like proximity bombs. If you go onto them, they will explode. They will do some decent amount of damage. In comes the blue explosion. Boom, off it goes. So tank, now you understand why you have to keep the boss on the move. You have to move it away from the blue circles. You also have to move it away from the bombs as well. And if you are DPS minded, oh yeah, also watch out for those as well. If you are DPS minded, you might just want to bring the boss slightly closer to the ads to help out. That's not an absolute, okay? Don't get panicky about that. That is something that the DPS really should deal with on their own. But that time you'll notice there were 4 ads that came into play, and that explosion hit me for around 2,300 damage. So the explosions, all the damage which comes in this fight is going to be damage that I would say moderate to high. Healers are going to have to look out for. Healers are going to have to be aware of. You start taking that sort of damage, healers are going to have to focus their attention on you. It's a very, very intensive fight for absolutely everybody. But as I said, we saw 4 of those ads coming in. We managed to blow up one immediately, blocking off that. But 3 other areas got covered. And then we had the blue there. And you notice we literally only had 2 squares near to me which I could go to, and there were 3 squares, I believe, free over on the left hand side. So a lot of surface area nearly went then. Again, 4 ads coming in, so you got to get onto those straight away, prevent them from taking over as many platforms as possibly can. Did alright there. We blew up 2 before they even got on the move, and these guys are both going to go down. We should thankfully, Yes, only managed to have 2 blue squares taken up, but we've got 3 bombs, 2 additional explosions. You notice how it just picks up the pace as the fight goes on. It gets more and more manic. It's great. Actually participating in this fight is absolutely awesome. Because I start to panic a little bit. But it just feels as if you are totally involved no matter what role you're doing. Tanks, because you're so aware of where you've got to position the boss, where you've got to be, you are constantly thinking about movement, where to position. Healers, of course, the amounts of damage which start to come into the fight are pretty massive. So you are always aware of what's going on there. Has a DPS taken a big hit? Have they stood in something which has exploded? Do they have the bomb on them, which I need to get off ASAP before that explodes? Because if that does explode, it's going to cause problems. And then you get into messes like we've got here, where we've actually allowed all 4 ads to move because I decided to spread damage instead of blowing one of them up. And we've now had 6 of the platforms taken up, potentially going to drop a 7th. No, we got a little bit lucky there. So 6 of the blue platforms totally covered, plus the 4 that the bombs are on at the minute. Never mind where the random yellow circles are going to land, and also never mind when the blue bomb, oh, there it comes in there. We got lucky. We got really lucky then. If that had come across the battlefield instead of down like it had, we would have likely have only had about 2, maybe 3 platforms to run to safely. That was a real stroke of luck that we got there. It could have put us in an almighty mess as we just get to the arse end of the fight. Boss hasn't got a lot of health to go. And the reason why I haven't sped up this fight and I've kept it on the speed that it was, really kind of wanted to show you the insane levels of how things absolutely happen. And there you go. Defeat that. That's the dungeon done. Get yourself your tomestones of lore. Hopefully some loot. Wipe off your brow because you're probably sweating like mad. And just see what this dungeon's all about. I thought it was a great dungeon. I would have hoped the trash would have been a little bit more condensed. I'm going to give the DPS some love. But my goodness, that was absolutely amazing. So I hope you enjoyed the vid. If you did, do give it a thumbs up and also subscribe. Follow me on social media and Twitch. Links are in the description down below. And I'll be back with more stuff very soon. You take care, everybody. Bye-bye.